What's up, everybody? This is Brittany Carbone, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Grow Room, a space where we cultivate consciousness by sharing stories that take us higher. Each episode, we share stories from a diverse range of guests, shining a light on their journey, the impetus, the challenges, the growth, and the rewards. In this episode, I am absolutely honored to have Manian and Noto with us to share their story from planting the seed to flowering and every step in between, how they got to where they are today, and is super inspiring and definitely chock full of wisdom and insight. So much so that we're going to be splitting it up into a two-parter because there is just so much. I don't want you guys to have to miss one piece of it. Ani is widely known as the ultimate mirror. He's a trusted advisor to the world's leading visionaries, entrepreneurs, and leaders, and the host of the You Are Limitless podcast. He's notorious for taking high achievers who have already created significant success and influence to far greater levels outside their realm of possibility by giving them an unfair advantage. And the unfair advantage is access to the vast creative potential of their own minds. He's really an amazing person to just even be able to speak to, even just for a little while. You see that power, you see that magic that he has right away. It's truly undeniable, and that makes perfect sense why he was able to attract such an amazing woman into his life and an amazing partner, Noto. Lee does similar work as far as helping people access the best versions of themselves and really get to the root of what's really going on and how to really elevate their own consciousness. But she does it more through the lens of relationships and intimacy. Lee helps powerful women access their innate emotional and erotic intelligence, helping them cultivate passion, fire, and deep connection in romantic relationships. Her intention with sharing this work is creating the most soulful, pleasure-filled relationships and really making people, women especially, believe that they're deserving of these relationships. And what's really amazing about Lee and Ani is that they both bring so much of their own experiences into what they do. They've been through it. They've been able to take what they've gone through, the lessons that they've learned, and transform it into something that can help so many people heal and help so many people really access the divine within themselves. And it's really so beautiful what they've built together. And now they are helping couples to reach new heights in their relationships, reach new levels of intimacy, understanding, and communication through their joined venture, which is called Untamed Intimacy. So without any further ado, Lee and Ani, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Grow Room.
Such a pleasure to be here having this conversation with you, Brittany. My work is just an extension of my being and who I am, which is the purpose of my life and this short time on this planet is to awaken people to higher levels of consciousness and to the full, limitless, perfect nature of their existence, of their being. I think most human beings live in this case of mistaken identity. They think they are this small egoic self that's manifested in this body that never feels enough, that always feels like something is missing, that's always fighting for its survival. And unfortunately, life just passes by and people end up growing old with a lot of regrets. And, I really found in my own journey a profound expansion of what reality can be like: peace, joy, happiness, a kind of equanimity. And, in my own journey, I found that how I show up to my business, how I show up to my life, to the people in my life, to literally every situation changed completely dramatically when I was able to expand into the full grandiosity of who I am. And I think it's true for every single human being. And so really my work involves allowing people to see themselves through my eyes, because when they see what I see, then everything changes.
Beautiful. Yeah, you have a way of just like no bullshit. I mean, Eric, my husband, and I, like, whenever we talk to you, Eric especially, he'll walk away and be like, fucking love Ani. He just like changed my life like in a second. Like just like seriously, just like, see past the fronts people put up, and like you said, like be able to give people a gift of being able to see themselves in a more kind of objective way, right? Like, and kind of remove all of the kind of like the barnacles that get built up on ourselves, right? When we have our own baggage and our own crap, right? It kind of gets stuck and blurs our own perception towards that for sure. So you definitely have a gift with how you do that, and I've witnessed it firsthand for sure. So that must have been how you were lucky enough to trick her into dating you, right?
Yep, that was definitely
That's
got the
what I
better end of
want.
that deal.
Yeah. So Lee, I would love to hear a bit more about you and what you do with your work as an intimacy and relationship coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the world of intimacy and relationships, everything starts with the self. And this is, I mean, really the foundation of Ani's work as well is, with my clients and those I work with, really looking at how we relate to ourselves. And like Ani said, so many of us were taught to relate to ourselves as not enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough, not man enough, whatever the predominant narrative is. And so in order to create deep intimacy and connection in relationships, we have to first be able to cultivate that relationship within ourselves. And so all of my work with my clients takes them on a journey through not only how they relate to either their current or future partners, but primarily how they're relating to themselves. So it is deeply, I'd say, a self-love journey, but it's just learning how to be okay with ourselves, like that deep place of calm okayness. The metaphor I like to use is, when you're out in the ocean and the waters are raging, there's a storm happening at the surface. If you dive down deep enough, the fish down there have no idea what's happening up top. The water is always calm to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have that place of depth within us as well, where everything's okay. We're fine. We're good.
Right.
Even if we're getting a divorce, even if we're, a loved one just passed away, even if we just got laid off,
Mm-hmm.
there is a place of okayness. And my deepest intention is to point people to that place. And I say that in saying that I have not perfected this whatsoever, but typically when people get into modalities like this, they do so because they themselves have struggled with that thing. And that's very much my story, and it's certainly why I was placed here. And then in addition to that, really looking at being fundamentally okay with ourselves through the lens of who we are as sexual beings.
Mm-hmm.
So really undoing the layers of shame and guilt, religious constructs, familial constructs, and being free, like being empowered in who we are as sexual beings and being able to use our sexual and creative life force energy to create good things in the world.
Yeah, it's kind of like that idea, like tantric kind of practices and things like that, and it's like just these ways to experience God, whatever you want to call it, right? Like just how to
Totally.
get closer to like that kind of energy and that like pure, like you said, life force is the perfect way to describe it. And I think that captures what it is on a very kind of literal way, but like when you kind of peel the layers back, like that's so meaningful. Like we take that for granted, that like that's such a powerful act in so many ways, right? So that's really cool. And that like you said, there's always this path that leads you to this, right? Like when you get into this kind of work there, it's something that could be dormant inside of you always, but it usually takes something to kind of spark that in you, right? And that gets us to our first stage in our growth cycle. Planting the seed, the first stage in our growth journey. No matter how great the tree or beautiful the flower, it all starts as an unassuming seed. For that seed to start its journey towards its ultimate destiny, it first must be buried. It must surrender to the darkness that it's experiencing and trust that it is happening for a reason. During this phase of growth, the priority becomes rooting, digging in and grounding ourselves in purpose and firmly establishing our place in the earth. We must trust that the crack in the soil will come and that the light will guide us further.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. I've been anxious, I've been depressed, I've been suicidal. I was actually first suicidal when I was 7 years old. And I've seen, poverty, I've seen wealth, I've, you know, really seen that no amount of money actually changes how you feel on the inside. And, I've had nothing, I've had everything, and, everything in between. And, I realized that pretty much how I lived my reality was a complete farce. It was a complete lie. And like most people, I was riding the escalator of expectations ever since I was a kid, you know, trying to do well in school, trying to, you know, get into a good school and get a good job, and the usual crap that, you know, society conditions us to do. And even at the peak of professional success, I was, you know, growing startups into hypergrowth, like 300-400% year over year. And it, you know, I traveled to over 60 countries. You know, I lived a really amazing life on the outside, but on the inside, I was just frighteningly miserable. And I had a very, very, very challenging relationship with myself. I really struggled to accept myself. Despite being in a relationship, felt really lonely. You know, was constantly in the past or the future, you know, rarely in the present. And it really required me to sort of numb the pain with all sorts of coping mechanisms. And, you know, the quote unquote crack in the dirt came in the form of my dad passing away at a, you know, fairly young age. It was like 62. And cremating his dead body just made me realize all the ways in which I was like him, and some of the ways I liked, and others I was just horrified by. And so that process basically, you know, at the time I was dating someone who's a therapist, and she started introducing these ideas of, like, you know, how our childhood experiences shape our adult experience, and, you know, all these patterns that repeat themselves. And I started sort of diving deeper and deeper and trying to understand. And I remember the day my dad died, like, I basically quit, you know, all the professional obligations I had. I, over the next few months, I ended the relationship I was in, walked away from several social circles, and basically went into monk mode, just really trying to understand myself and trying to really understand the core of who I am as a being, and meditating and just, you know, working with people. Because what I realized was that my dad died because he didn't love himself enough, because he was too disconnected from himself. And, you know, he worked his ass off trying to essentially buy safety with wealth and buy safety with accomplishments and success. But that emotional disconnection basically manifested as a lot of stress in his body, which, you know, created some issues with his liver. And ultimately, he developed liver cirrhosis and died of a brain hemorrhage. And the entire journey I could see, you know, ever since I was a kid, of a human being slowly separating from themselves and eventually dying because they never knew how to hold their own experience. And so I just swore that I would spend the rest of my life making sure that as many people as I could touch would sort of avoid that fate. Because we see this all around us. We see a lot of people suffering.
Mhm.
And I believe that all of this suffering is self-created, and all of this suffering is optional. And when we understand the nature of who we are and how our mind works and how reality works, and how to really make sense of this machine, this human body that we suddenly wake up inside, then we can actually start getting into the driver's seat of our life. We can start creating, we can start responding rather than reacting, and we can start really consciously creating the reality that we want to live.
Yeah, and it takes, unfortunately, usually something like that, like something that kind of just smacks your life awake, kind of, you know what I mean, and really kind of just pushes you where you're supposed to be. It's not like a gentle tap. It's like,
Right,
boom,
right, right.
it's a shove, for sure. But uh, and it's so true. I one of, like, you know, my favorite saying is like, the ego, it makes a great servant but a terrible master, right? So like just really understanding how to, you said, just be, how to exist, and how you're supposed to kind of just relate to yourself and relate to others in this reality. I think a lot of people have it so backwards, like, right, we know most people are ruled by their egos, by like those kind of like basic necessities, and just really not understanding that there could be so much more for them, right? And it's definitely easier said than done, right? Like you can have this awareness, but it takes a lot of work to actually continue to push through it, right? So, and actually to kind of get to the other side of it, again, and even when you get to the other side, it's constant practice to not fall back, right? It's just always work, but it's definitely life-changing work. Once you kind of just get a glimpse of that, even you can never really fully go back. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of fall back asleep, but it's going to be a lot easier to wake yourself back up, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so Lee, what was it for you? Like how did this journey start for you, and what was your planting the seed moment?
Yeah, so the crack in the dirt came in 2017, but I'll start a little while before that. I was raised primarily by my mother, who's Chinese, and my father was there here and there. He traveled a lot for work, so even though they're still married, they weren't together often. Um, and so the the archetype of the Chinese tiger mom absolutely exists, is totally real, and I have one of them. Lucky enough, I got her straight from China, and she wanted the best for me. She wanted to give me everything she didn't have, and she would do that by any means necessary. And you know, by her standards, what she did was absolutely necessary to give me the life I have now. And all in all, I'm so grateful for it. However, when we look back at some of the practices in the household growing up, they were definitely severely emotionally, psychologically abusive. And early on, I really formed the impression that I was never good enough. I was not good enough for anyone or anything. I would get grounded if I didn't get straight A's. I'd be perpetually punished for not cleaning well enough. Everything, all of my love and the receiving of love was based on performance. And even though we were close growing up, I just really internalized this not enoughness. And because my dad wasn't really around so much, and I never dared to act out in front of my mother when it came to grades, alcohol, drugs, anything like that, I sought refuge in men. And so I started dating at a very early age. I had sex very early in my life, way younger than I should have in retrospect. And that was where I received all of my love and validation that I didn't have to pay for through performance. Although I was pretty conditioned into performing. So I still would put on an act for a lot of the men that I dated, whether that was sexual, emotional. And I was really sort of disconnected from myself for a long time, although I didn't know it then. And so I remember that being just a pretty consistent habit, either seeking someone out or consistently dating someone. And this continued all the way through my early adult years until I found a partner whom I was very in love with. And I don't know if you've ever seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you remember the opening scene in season 1 where she wakes up before her husband, she takes her rollers out, she puts her makeup on, she touches up, she slips back into bed and just like nonchalantly wakes up with the alarm, right?
Uh-huh.
When I saw that scene, I was like, that's so sad. I can't believe she thinks she has to do that. And then I'm like, oh shit, I do that. I was literally doing that for the partner I was with at the time. Would never sleep, would wake up early, would freshen up. And I did everything I could to make myself quote unquote perfect for this guy. And he was on his own journey. So he was like, all right, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm moving to California. We were living in New York at the time. And I'm like, fuck off. What is in California that's not here? Like, I did everything for you. I made myself perfect. I changed myself. And once he left, I spent months hiding my emotions, throwing myself into work, grad school, an apprenticeship I was in. I did everything to not feel the feelings.
Right.
And after a few months of that, my body had had enough. I was having cystic breakouts, hives all over my body, and I wasn't listening until one day I woke up and the whole left side of my face was paralyzed.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was like that for about 3 months. And I know now that it was repressed emotions, repressed anger, not really dealing with what was happening, avoiding everything, overworking myself, tons of stress. And I went on this really epic healing journey to heal without prescription medicines, but to use acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and basically overhauling my entire life. I knew that something had caused that, and I had to change something about the way I was living. And so that really catapulted me into my wellness journey and into inquiring, like, okay, what is it about my lifestyle, thoughts, and beliefs that led me here that I may want to reconsider? And that was how I started coaching. That was how I started all the work I'm doing now. And, I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but I certainly wouldn't take it back.
Yeah, and that's it. Make every experience makes you who you are, but that's definitely so interesting because I think that so many people, women especially, are stuck in that cycle, and
Yeah.
so much of that needing to be perfect kind of thing, and while like you create conditions for people to love you, right? And where love should be unconditional, right? That's like the most beautiful gift you could give somebody is unconditional love. And when you feel like it is conditional, like you are going to do whatever it is to meet those conditions, right? Because that's all we want at the end of the day is to feel loved and to feel that. And like you were saying before, it starts with loving yourself. And that's definitely the part that a lot of people miss, because if you have that true unconditional love for yourself, and your love for yourself is not based on the conditions of, well, does somebody else love me? Like, am I getting good grades? Like, so like I don't get in trouble. Like, you know what I mean? If your love for yourself can't even be based like on your mom's love for you, or you know what I mean? It's just when you are secure enough, just within, and kind of like you were saying, finding that place of peace within you, and that stillness, you can kind of get through anything, right? Might not be easy, but you can get through it because you have that relationship with yourself, and know how to value yourself. I think that at the end of the day, that's what people have hardest thing to do, and I think what both of you recognize so clearly as problems that are so pervasive throughout throughout society, throughout men and women, throughout the poor and the rich. It does not discriminate, right? Like the feeling of just not being enough, or just not valuing yourself enough. And it's definitely something that I've been working on. And even just business wise, it's definitely like just being able to even stand your ground and like be a boss, right? Like being like a CEO is something that's new to me, and just I have to just kind of channel like that CEO energy sometimes, and just like remember, like like no, like I am the boss. Like I can make these decisions, and I can, you know what I mean? And like I don't have to worry if somebody else is going to be upset, right? Like it's just, you have to be confident enough within yourself. But if like you're constantly thinking, like, which I do, like, well, what if like, they don't want to work with us anymore? Like what if I lose the client? What if and it's just like that's all my own insecurities, right? Projecting onto somebody else. And being able to get past that, or at least be aware of it when it's coming up, is such a is so powerful, and just the way that you do everything in life, right? So after that seed is planted, you start cracking through the dirt. Now we get into the stretch. And while planting the seed is all about rooting down, the stretch is all about reaching up. This is where growth becomes most apparent as the plant reaches up towards the sun, following its path and facing the elements along the way that will challenge its growth but ultimately strengthen its resiliency. In another act of divine surrendering, the plant continues to expand itself, trusting that this growth is happening for a reason, that it is happening in preparation of the bountiful buds that it will soon bear. Once you started on this journey, Ani, and once you started to really go into that monk mode, right, after your father passed away, what was that like, kind of just getting started into the actual business of what you were doing?
Yeah, there was, I actually did a lot of things to really just avoid starting the business, because for years I actually spent time just helping people pro bono, and these were people who would never be able to afford working with someone. People lost their jobs, lost their kids, like lost their marriages, people basically hitting rock bottom. And I find these people on forums on the internet, and I reach out, and I just work with them. And it led to some really, really incredible just moments of pure humanity. And I just immerse myself so deeply in helping people transmute their pain and suffering into a sense of peace and well-being, that for a long time I was just spending savings and, bringing that account close to zero. And eventually, these people start asking, what do you sell? What exactly do you do? And I remember not having an answer for a long time. Like, what do I do? I mean, what is this thing that I'm doing? And, is this something I should turn into a thing? And like the best businesses, the genesis of, this business was really people telling me that, hey, you need to do this like full time. There's a lot of people you need that can use your help. And, the thing about money is that money allows us to actually do a lot of good in the world. It just allows us to amplify whatever our intentions are. And I realized that, if I was really, really serious about helping people, and the only way it could happen was if I treated it like a business, because the nonprofit model doesn't work. And so, I started putting together a model where um, the business essentially is fueled by working with really high impact, high profile entrepreneurs, leaders, change makers. And that actually pays for all the pro bono work that I do. And so it's a Robin Hood model that I've had in my head since I was, I think, like 9 years old or something. Because I grew up, super poor, and I saw like the extreme disparity that existed in the world, and it just didn't seem right. So, part of the work is um, it's the same work, but sometimes the work also involves the use of psychedelic medicine as a transformative tool, because as you were saying in the beginning, what every single human being is searching for is a unification with God. Everyone wants to be one with the divine, and whatever religion you find yourself affiliated with, like, or if you're an atheist, that's why we have sex, because in those moments our egoic narrative self fades away and we just merge, we just become one, we experience that sense of oneness. And this work is really about helping people be one with themselves, so that people in the world can be one with each other, and together we can raise the collective field and really make this planet a peaceful, more loving place where there isn't war, there isn't extreme poverty and inequality, there isn't systemic racism. We don't incarcerate people to profit off of them. We don't um, create these structures to keep people enslaved in their conditioning and keep them trapped. And that's my deepest hope for humanity. It's one in which we forget that we ever had any sense of limitation, and we can truly be free. And that really, to me, that freedom actually begins with our mind, because unless we can be free in our minds, we can't really be free in our bodies or in the world.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not only impactful in the sense of like how you can take the money that you make from coaching these like higher kind of higher profile, big money kind of entrepreneurs. That's real also is really impactful to have people in those positions actually, be able to harness like that energy and be able to create that alignment within themselves, because like, these are the people, like whether we like it or not, that are running a lot of our lives, right? Like a lot of aspects of our lives. And if it starts there, right? There's always going to be good and evil, right? Like there always has to be kind of equal and opposite forces and everything in the world. But I think that we could minimize that evil and what that actually means in such a big way if people just kind of woke up to what you were just saying. And like it starts from the top down, because what we are taught through our current systems and our current leadership, from every level is this very egoic and capitalistic kind of mindset, like capitalism in itself kind of just being a very ego driven kind of belief. And that's like what we're all about. And like, Lee, like what you were saying, just as far as kind of attaching your worth to something, like what, like the value of that you put on yourself being based on the value of kind of the what you're accomplishing. And that is that's capitalism, right? It's just like saying like every man for himself, and you know what I mean. And it's just like some people are better than business than others, but everybody has an equal opportunity. But like, no, like right now in these current conditions, not everybody has an equal opportunity. People are starting from very different starting lines. So like getting people in these higher power positions, these more influential positions, to wake up and understand like the kind of impact that just like what that can do from just like a trickle down kind of level is so important, right? That's what we need, like that change, because then once the systems change, right, like what we're seeing right now with racism, and just really being sick of like just the same old like protests, and then going back to the way things were, right? And it seems so extreme to defund the police, right? Like people are, it's such like a, just saying that term like got people so kind of shook up, because it's like, what do you mean? Like it's like something you're so comfortable with, but like honestly, is it working, right? Like no, obviously not. So like until that system changes, no matter whether like the cop is like the one bad apple theory or whatever, it's um even the good cops are going to get stuck in a bad system, right? So it's just going to keep perpetuating itself. So like helping to create that change from the top is so important. And like, have you felt like you've like seen that like kind of seen kind of that ripple effect happen with any of your clients, like taking it just into their businesses and impacting from there?
Totally. I think doing it from the top is the quickest way to do it, because the people who run corporations, who run Hollywood production houses, who run hospitals, and my clients like span a whole range of these fields and echelons, are all in a position where they influence hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives. And when we change the frequency at the top, there's a massive, massive ripple down effect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I really believe that that's where change is needed the most. Because if we can shift the energetic balance of the people who are running the country, who are running healthcare systems, police systems, um, banking, all of these systems where the dominant energy is lack, it's greed, it's anger, it's lack of empathy, it's a sense of hyper individualism where it's all about me and my needs. That's the energy of separation.
Mm-hmm.
That's the energy of being separated from oneself and the source of one's self, right? And so when you take someone like Trump, when you take someone who is actively racist, what I feel when I see that is a lot of pain, because hurt people, and unfortunately we're swimming in a sea of collective trauma. And you have people who are really hurting on the inside because they're disconnected from themselves, they're separated from themselves. And so when we feel disconnected from ourselves, that's how we treat other people. And so imagine if the CEOs of like the Fortune 500 companies experience a shift in their consciousness, where they become more connected to themselves, they become more connected to source, they become more connected to empathy, to gratitude, to compassion. And they realize that they already have $100 million in the bank, and having another 100 isn't going to fill that gap, that void that they feel. But what will is actually using their power, using their influence, using their position to make a difference in the world, to do something for someone else. And the thing is, no matter how much money we accumulate, how big our house is, how nice our car is, as long as we're driven by the egoic self, something will always be missing. And that's because the egoic self is inherently incomplete. It's one part of the whole. And all we're doing in life is we're seeking that wholeness. We're seeking that encounter with the divine where we feel complete. Most people get into relationships because they want someone to complete them, right? They want the other half of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all whole in ourselves. But most people never experience their wholeness. That's why they try to earn their wholeness by working, by making a lot of money, by having a lot of success, so they can be like, look at me,
Right.
look at what I did, well, look at what I created, validate me, show me love,
Right.
right? Recognize me, appreciate me. But what they're really seeking is that from themselves. which they never give themselves.
Yep. Leah, I'd love to get into kind of the start of your stretch and just and we're not done with you yet, Ani. You're still stretching over there. You're just going to continue to reach up towards the sun on the side while we talk to Leah, right? But
Forever.
so yeah, so how did you start actually kind of just taking these realizations that you had and turning it into action and actually starting to help people discover these things within themselves?
Yeah. So the first thing there was it took an epic heartbreak to realize that something about the way I was living was not working. And while it was a very painful and challenging experience, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. At this time, I was also working a job in corporate in New York City. And I very much loved the New York City hustle. But I knew that that wasn't the end all be all for where I wanted to go with life and how I wanted to help create positive change in the world. So during that time, I went back to get 2 coaching certifications. And I was also in a really intensive 2-year apprenticeship. And so I knew that I was creating my exit strategy. Although the universe took care of it for me because I found myself later that year in 2017 on a vision quest in Peru, getting to work with some amazing indigenous shamans there. And I remember on that trip saying, I wish to let go of that which is not truly me. Like if it's not mine, I'm good. I'm done. I'm complete. Came back 2 days later, got laid off from the corporate job. I was like, oh, universe, you work fast.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And thankfully, during this time, I was growing a coaching business and I was also a practitioner in the sex work industry. Now, this went hand in hand with my work as an intimacy coach because I was doing really deep spiritual work in the sexual realm with clients who really needed support in how they were navigating their sexual traumas, their sexual desires, how to have conversations, how to honor boundaries, how to be seen, how to hold someone, how to be held. And so there are a lot of misconceptions about the sex work industry. And one of my missions in life is to really bring that work to the forefront, not only so we can really start to bring the shadows to light so that we can start to give love to people who are forced into this work, but also to showcase the people who do this work consensually as a service to the world. I always say the way you'd see a chiropractor for an adjustment, if you wanted to learn how to be an enlightened sexual being who can reach God and higher consciousness through our, sexuality, why not see a practitioner to learn how to do that? And so as I was on that journey, I was humbled by the people I got to work with, the things I got to learn about people. I mean, I got to learn everything about particularly the male human psyche. And it was just so fascinating. And I got to learn how lonely people were. People were so lonely, and these were, executives, CEOs, world traveling people with a lot of money and very alone inside, that just wanted love, that just wanted to be held, that just wanted to be seen by someone else. And they didn't know how to do that for themselves. And I was someone who really helped them see themselves in that way. And so it was a really profound experience and really helped provide a lot of context for me and an ability to heal through a lot of my own sexual traumas. And then to bring that to, friends. And so that was a really, really big time of growth and stretch for me because I completely, had my world turned upside down from corporate to not corporate at all. And it is work that I respect and honor no matter where someone is in that industry. I respect and honor the work that they do. And it has shown me so much about our power as beings. And, my hope is to really share that with others, how powerful we are and how when we harness our life force energy, whether we use it for a sexual act or to create a project or to change the world, it doesn't matter, but we have the ability to do that. And I'm on a mission to learn more about that for myself and to share more about that with others. And that leads me to the work that I do now, particularly with women in how we're relating to ourselves as sexual beings and powerful creators in the world.
Yeah, and I think that that's you doing that work, like you are working with somebody in the like the kind of the most vulnerable state, right? And so like you like literally intimately get to know somebody and being able to kind of take that, like you said, like what you learn about the male psyche even, right? Like helps you to understand, you know, how you relate with them, right? And it's just like even like you said, taking that to your friends, just like women, yeah, trying to figure out men, men trying to figure out women, whatever it is, like we're always just trying to figure each other out. Like it's not that we're that different. It's just we're all actually all the same. And I think what a lot of people get lost in is that the fact that like the vulnerability and emotion that men have, right? And just I think it's very much always about balancing that, you know, the divine feminine and divine masculine and those energies. Like you said, it's just we have so much power within us, and we all have both of those powers within us, both like the feminine and the masculine, and it's understanding how to harness both of those and how to develop them within yourself in a way that you feel comfortable, right? And being able to you know, no matter how masculine you are, being able to tap into that feminine energy of just being able to love and to nurture and to give and to care, and like being okay with that is so important. And then being able to balance that with kind of just more of that grounding energy to actually kind of take action upon it is really, that's what it should be, right? It shouldn't be about like this is just one or the other that you have to have within you. It's a combination of the both, but it's definitely you know, something that is coming to light a little bit more now, I guess, like the sex work stuff. But I think it's like super
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Like, you know, like you said, there's a lot of people that do it consensually, and like something like that. Like I've really actually never thought of it in the way that you're describing, and like the kind of work that you've done. Like, yeah, like it's just like going to like a chiropractor, like going to like a doctor, or
Yeah.
something like that, right? Like, and it's definitely there are so many women that do sex work consensually, right? Like my dad used to own a strip club. Like my entire life
Mm.
growing up, my dad owned a strip club, and you know that was always like feel bad for strippers, but like then like I got to realize that like when I got to know some of these girls, like they were fucking balling, like they were
Yeah.
so confident, like, and they were just like raking in the money, felt great about themselves. I was like, well, I shouldn't feel bad for anybody. Like this is like they're killing it right now. They love what they're doing. Like who cares, right? Like it's just like as long as they're cool with it, like hey, what's wrong with that, right? And it's definitely really interesting to kind of just hear this conversation become more mainstream in a lot of ways, that like kind of just legalizing sex work and everything like that, and kind of removing the stigma around it. It's super interesting. So we're going to go back to Ani, because I think an important part of the stretch phase is that like resilience, right? Is continuing that stretch, and there's always going to be challenges that you face during that cycle. So what was like some of the biggest hurdles that you faced, the challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, it's, you know, so many, so many. Um, I feel like believing in myself was a big one in there, because in this in doing this work, I've literally created myself from scratch. It's still the same essence, but if you'd met me 10 years ago, right, I would probably be very, very, very different in my experience of reality. Probably be a lot more self-conscious. I'd probably have a lot more anxiety, probably have longer depressive phases. And so it's been a really interesting journey to create myself and to architect myself from scratch. And believing in myself and believing that this work that I do, you know, definitely was something I struggled with a lot. Um, because, you know, when you start a business from scratch and when you are the product, that can pose some interesting challenges, because you're not dispassionately marketing this tool or this other thing. You're marketing yourself. So pretty much every inadequacy, every insecurity, every question of self-worth basically comes to the forefront. And you know, that's why I really believe that starting a business, entrepreneurship is really the most intense personal growth experience any human being can have, because it has a way of bringing all our shit, you know, to right in front of our eyes, and we can't look away. Because, business is very clear. If you're bringing in money, then it's doing well. If you're not bringing in money, something's missing. And so very quickly you can tell what's missing. And so I struggled with putting myself out there. I struggled with, really clearly defining what I do, because so much of what I do is who I am. I, struggle to articulate clearly, like, the specific results that someone would get, because how do you quantify feeling good about yourself? How do you quantify mental peace? How do you quantify just being in love with life and being stress-free? And, you know, a lot of my initial sort of time in running this business and doing this work, I was trying to get it perfect. And this sense of perfectionism that's been there since I was a kid, because my dad was like an extreme perfectionist with me, like didn't say anything positive to me, like, my whole life.
Yeah.
And nothing was ever good enough. So I projected that same sense, that same his voice in my own head for literally everything I did. So I didn't celebrate my wins hard enough. I didn't um, pause enough in the early days to really be like, okay, this is pretty good, because it was never good enough. So it was literally this whole host of, deep internal challenges. But what I'm every day that goes by, I really see that every single one of those challenges was actually a gift. And the more of those challenges I experience, the more pain I experience, the deeper I can relate to the people I work with.
Yeah.
So all my trauma, all my pain, all my suffering, all my struggles have actually given me the ability to really relate to people in an extraordinary way. And it allows me to really see people deeper than they've ever been seen before, because I can literally feel them in my body.
Yeah, to have a much deeper sense of empathy. And I think, those challenges make us who we are, but also make us that much better at who we are, because I think it forces us to just kind of double down on the commitments that we make to ourselves, because when things get tough, that's when you either walk away or you go harder, right? And it's like, if your heart's not in it, if it's not like what your soul's journey is, like, you'll most likely just walk away, right? You'll give up, like, you might even like kind of fall back into like worse shape than you were mentally, right? And it's just, but when you know that you're on this the right path for that you're supposed to be on in your life, you just have to keep going. And every challenge that you meet along the way is going to make you stronger and kind of just give you more tools in your toolbox, right, to do what you do. So Lee, like, what was like the biggest thing that you learned about yourself through this journey as you're growing, going through these challenges? Like, what were you learning along the way?
Oh man, I learned so much. One, I've had so many touch points with how capable and how powerful I am. And as many touch points as I've had with that place as I've also forgotten. And
Yeah.
so it's this series of remembering and forgetting, remembering and forgetting. And, these past few months have even been a bit of a challenge with remembering. And I'm now waking back up again into, okay, no, I think I can do what I'm doing. So, that was one of the biggest challenges. As far as lessons learned, um, I've learned so much about myself, particularly in this last year and in these last few years, namely from some of the bigger challenges. And it was how I had spent my whole life creating my own suffering. And I had one teacher in particular that really showed me this, and then another teacher right here who has showed me this many, many times. And that was a part of the deal that I got when when he got to date
It's a
me.
pretty good deal.
It's a really
It's a
good
pretty
deal.
good deal.
It's a good
You
deal.
know how much I charge?
I know. So so I it's been an unraveling process, but like you were saying earlier, Brittany, like just really starting to see how I have just had these thoughts and these constructs the whole time. And I'd kept myself in this tight little box. And the metaphor I use is I've been in this jail cell for years and years and years, but the door's been open. I could have walked out at any time, but I was just so scared, afraid of what people would think, how they would judge me, if I'd lose love, if I'd be rejected, if I'd fail in business. And one of the biggest things I'm coming to find now, which is sort of the cherry on top here, is that, if I follow my joy, and if I am just so unapologetically me, anything I could ever want lives in that place. Abundance, connection, health, wealth, opportunity, love lives in the place of joy. And so that's the only thing we have to do. We don't really have to do anything else, though we bust our asses on doing all of these things to keep up appearances and to make sure we have followers and whatever it is. And all we have to do is just come back to ourselves. All of the success and happiness and wealth lives there. And it might be different than what we think it is. Maybe it's not a bunch of zeros in the bank account. Maybe it's something else. But I've been trying this on as much as possible every day to live from a place of joy. And on some days I nail it. Other days I fall flat on my face. But I do know that the truth is there and it exists within me all the time, just like it exists within all of us all the time. That place of okayness never goes away. And so I'd say that's probably the biggest learning that I've had. And it's so simple. All the good truths are very, very simple. So
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for it.
Amazing. The final stage in our growth cycle is flowering. Now you've expanded yourself in such a way that you are ready to bear the fruits of your labor. Without the strong roots, without the big stretch, the plant's yield cannot be as plentiful. Without trust in ourselves, without resiliency against the inevitable challenges that arise, without surrendering to something greater, we aren't able to reach our full potential either. Flowering is the beauty of the journey manifested in tangible forms, the manifestation of a fully realized incarnation. Would love for you guys to tell me, kind of give you a little background on how you met, and kind of just how this beautiful relationship formed, and what you guys have been doing together collectively, what you've learned about each other, because I'm very interested.
Yeah. So we met at a workshop in Brooklyn, actually. Very normal way to meet. Mm-hmm. And ironically enough, we lived just a few blocks away from each other in the Lower East Side in New York City for years. We frequented the same coffee shops. Ani played soccer on a field right in front of the apartment I was living in. And we never once met while we lived in that close proximity to one another. When I moved out of the city into Brooklyn is when we met at this workshop. And I know that I was immediately intrigued by Ani's energy. I didn't know that it would turn out to be a romantic relationship, but I did, however, have the impression that we would lead work together. And when we met, I was already, well into this work on intimacy. And I thought it would be really great to have a male counterpart to lead this work with. So there was a masculine representation and a feminine representation in physical form. And that's how our friendship began. I was like, I want to get coffee with this guy and hear what he's all about.
Which translates to, I want to sit in a coffee shop at 10 in the morning and cry and bawl my eyes out.
That didn't happen.
Because that's
it did.
And the truth.
Ani has this. We should call it the Ani effect.
Yeah. But yeah, so that is a very kind of just, I think that tells you right off the bat, if that's like kind of like your first, like, okay, let's like just get some coffee or whatever, and it turns into that. Like you said, he has this way of doing that, right?
Yeah. He does.
That should just be my tagline. I make people cry.
Yeah. So I remember saying to him after that first meeting, I was like, there's only a handful of men in my life that I actually feel this safe with. And I know that I've only just met you, but you're one of them. And then we gave this like beautiful warm hug. And I just like melted into his arms. And after that, we remained super platonic friends for a few months, probably because Ani was not putting off any vibes. I probably would have jumped his bones sooner, but he didn't give me the chance. He was playing hard to get, probably for the better. But as our friendship developed a few months in, I was like, I think I actually like this guy, but I don't, is he asexual? Like, I don't know. He's not giving me any vibes. So I was a little confused, but there was one fateful weekend where a bunch of us went away on a trip, and I professed my love to Ani, and just knew that I needed to express it with no expectation of what I'd receive. And when I told him,
which was good because you didn't receive.
I didn't receive anything. when I tried to play it cool,
Yeah.
I tried to play it cool, and I was like, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm low key in love with you. Like not super in love, but
Right.
just
Like,
you know, just somewhere in
yeah,
there."
yeah, right.
And he was like, "Thank you for sharing that." I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess my job is done here. Can go back to the French trip now."
All right. Well, that's that. Yeah.
And but once I did that, I was like, all right, I gotta snatch this guy up. So I made a few more advances over the following weeks to, you know, get together and have dinner and things like that. And when he invited me over his place, and again, I had no expectations. I was like, we might eat dinner and then I go home.
Right.
But you know, magical things happen on New York City fire escapes, and that's where we had our first kiss.
Amazing.
And it's been history ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what took you so long?
You know, I know people really well, and that's both a gift and a curse. And you know, I have a sixth sense about these things, and I just knew there wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
Until it was the right time, and then it was the right time.
Right.
And you know, it's someone listening could think that our relationship is a fairy tale. It's quite the opposite, but it's still a fairy tale, right? Because what I wanted, and I was like, I'd sworn off dating for a while before I met Lee, and you know, I was still like holding that boundary because I was only interested in a kind of relationship that could serve as the highest container for spiritual growth, because I really feel like our partners can be our greatest teachers and be, you know, really good mirrors for us. And I didn't want to just do what I've always done, you know, which is, you know, date someone or be in a relationship because I was trying to distract myself from myself. And you know, our relationship has been extremely powerful in that sense because we really held space for each other's trauma, each other's triggers, each other's all of each other's shit, and really seen our own. And in this process, we've not only really helped each other heal and each other grow, but we've also worked with a lot of people. We've been working with individuals and couples with and without the use of psychedelic tools to really transform their relationship with themselves and each other. And, you know, that has been such a beautiful journey because we can bring a divine masculine, divine feminine balance to these experiences. And we're both so deeply committed to helping people create safety in their bodies, safety in their homes, safety in their relationships, that everything that we do in our relationship is like a, you know, a little test guinea pig
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
A relationship basically is turned into a lab for transforming consciousness. And to me, like, that's the only kind of relationship that I want to be in.
That's beautiful. I completely agree that it's that partner is so important because they can either raise you up or bring you down, and you can be on your individual journey towards, your higher self. But if the person that you're spending your life with and like who's like, whose energy is around you the most and everything, if they are kind of just not feeling that and not on that same path and not understanding of your path, you're only going to get so high.
You know, something that I've had the great privilege to experience in this relationship is like having my number one supporter around all the time. I've had so many instances, and you know, when you walk an alternative path, you can get a lot of pushback from people because you don't fit into the box that they put you in, be it family, friends, whomever.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout my journey, I've gotten a lot of pushback, and Ani has been unwavering in his support and in his belief of me on this path. And so there were so many times where I didn't believe in myself. I didn't think I was capable or able. My family didn't think I was capable or able, nor should I be doing what I'm doing. And Ani was always there. And so him just being that, you know, that support, that rock, whether it was kind words, a hug, really providing like badass business coaching. I mean, we've had such a dynamic relationship in that sense, but just having that you know, advocate, fan, champion in our corner can be so helpful, and something that, you know, we talk about often. And I didn't really understand this concept until coming into this relationship, is that Ani sees my highest potential. He sees who I can be. And sure, there's a fine line between holding someone to that on the day to day, but also showing them like, hey, you are capable of anything. Anything you want to do, you can do. Just take one step at a time. And so having that encouragement has helped tremendously. Um, and that's, that's something that I've learned from him in really trying to be able to provide that back in the ways that I can, whether that's bringing levity to a situation, um, you know, bringing a sense of gentleness and feminine nurture to a situation, because Ani does have he has a lot of gentle feminine energy, but he also has a lot of yang energy. And so when I can perceive what's happening and when I can meet his masculine energy with a gentle feminine, it really supports him in being able to go and do and achieve, and also relax and replenish and rest and tap into creative energy. And there's a beautiful dynamic sense, when you become this intimate with someone, that you can pick up on where they're at, you can attune to them, and you can kind of ebb and flow and really create the kind of container in which the most healing can happen, the most lightheartedness, the most joy, the most powerful sex. And so it's been a practice of really being in that dance together, and being able to practice, whatever practices come along to allow us to support each other in that way.
Yeah. Do you have anything
Yeah,
to add there?
yeah, I'll just say, I think one of the deepest practices that we've sort of turned to over and over again is just acceptance, both acceptance of ourselves, but acceptance of the other. And, I really think that's one of the most profound things that any people in any relationship, whether it's a parent with the parent or a friend or a sibling or partner, can we accept the other exactly as they are?
Right.
Can we just hold back from needing them to change, needing them to be different, needing them to be a certain way, needing them to fit into our definition of how they need to be? Because, one thing I see is that pretty much everyone on the planet is having a hard time accepting themselves. And hardly anyone's able to model for the other what that could look like. And people are walking around ashamed of their bodies, ashamed of, their past, ashamed of their tendencies, ashamed of, so many things. And what we need, what's medicine, is compassion and that acceptance. And so one of the things in which, one of the ways in which we've served each other is that acceptance, because, that is such a powerful medicine.
Absolutely. And kind of like just being able to give that kind of unconditional love, right? Like, I accept you for who you are, not like I accept you like, based on, what your performance is, or you know what I mean, or anything like that. And that's yeah, definitely, I agree, it's so important, because that's what gives you the confidence to be like, okay, like I am okay. That's what gives you kind of permission to love yourself, is when you can see that love being given by somebody else. Because it's all, we're just like, Ani, I like love that you just like kind of call yourself like the ultimate mirror, because we are all mirrors for each other, right? Like, it's just, we're all, projecting our own shit on other people. People are projecting our shit on us. But like, when we can kind of just see that more clearly, and right, like, and having just like that awareness of like being able to actually learn from other people, right? And just like not just be triggered, but like actually like learn, like, why am I reacting like this, or why am I really attracted to this person? Like, what do I love about them? And like, how do I kind of create that within myself? Just, you guys are such an amazing example of kind of, like the pinnacle of, what these kinds of relationships could be like, just really bringing two like really strong energies, and yeah, just not your normal perspectives on relationships, right? It's just like, you guys are obviously seeing things from a space of, how do we continue to grow, and how do we continue to, push our relationship, to push ourselves, and, to really get the most out of the human experience. And I think that that's like really amazing. And, you guys really kind of put that to the test recently. So after you were together for how long, you decided to just pick up and go?
4 months, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So after 4 months, you guys, you guys were living in New York, and I run into you at Whole Foods, and like, yeah, like just backpack, and we're just gonna pack up and go. I was like, that's amazing. Nice to meet you, Lee. Like, it's like happening so quickly. I feel like, it's funny though, because I remember when you guys like first started dating, I was hanging out with Haley, who's kind of how we met. You and Haley all met the same night out,
Yeah.
and yeah, she was like, was having a hard time getting in touch with you or something like that, and she was like, well, he's just like started to date this girl, Lee. She's like an intimacy coach. I was like, oh, like, yeah, leave him alone. He's definitely right now enjoying himself. But then, like, yeah, she was just explaining then like a little bit more about Lee, and kind of just how amazing you guys like already. She could see you as a couple and everything. So when I ran into you and got the opportunity to meet Lee at that point, like, and you were telling me about your journey, it was like, oh my God, but it also wasn't super surprising given like what I had already known about you, and the kind of just the mindset that you have. It's limitless. It's taking away these boundaries. So yeah, tell me how that went, how it's going. You guys are still now in Austin, Texas, right? It's where you're. Uh,
Yeah.
yep. All right.
So I was like sick of New York winters,
Yeah.
and I said to Lee, hey, like I'm not, I don't want to be in New York for the winter. Do you want to toss out like 80% of your stuff, put the rest in storage, and just hit the road and just be a nomad for a while?
Yeah.
She's like, okay. So yeah, but it's crazy because when we decided, um, she literally, I get an email from my landlord. I hadn't spoken to the guy for 6 years, and he says, hey, like I'm your landlord, Joe, remember me? Haha. um, um, can we talk, because I'm thinking of listing the apartment for sale.
Well,
And this is like, I think the week after we had like decided, and she was away, and she comes back. No, actually she was in Florida for her birthday, and she gets an email from her roommate saying that her building had bed bugs. So they write a letter to the management company, and they're like, okay, you can leave your lease in like 3 days. So
wow.
she flies back. We toss out whatever needs to be tossed out, move all her stuff to my place, and she's out of her lease. And in a month, I'm out of my lease. And then we were basically just free birds.
Yeah.
So this whole thing has been, an experiment in radical surrender, because, I was noticing that I was creating safety using my apartment, having an address, having, this place, my city, New York, like, and I was like, what would happen if I removed all these external sources of safety? And it's been intense. It's been, we've been moving basically every month. Um, and, you know, COVID sort of halted all our travel and all our plans. We were supposed to go to a wedding in the Philippines, and, so much stuff. And it's just been such a beautiful lesson in surrendering and in adapting and in really seeing how little we need. Like I have, so something that most people don't know about me is that I love shoes. I have way more pairs of shoes than Lee does.
Like 4 times the amount.
Like,
And
here's are all kinds of shoes.
like
All
all
kinds.
kinds.
Short of stilettos.
And so, but the past, 8 months, 9 months, I've only had two pairs, like one pair for like working out and any active stuff, and one pair for like, other stuff.
Right.
And I've not missed anything. We've basically lived out of two suitcases for the past 8 months. And we look at our stuff, we're like, wow, we have too much stuff. And we've really learned like how little we actually need. We think we need so many things. We think we need like all these things to be happy and to feel good. But it's really helped us strip life down to its essence.
Yeah.
And we find that, when our relationship is doing great, and, our own mental health, physical health is doing great, we don't really need much else.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's, I think, the goal for people to get to. And I think what you have the ability to teach people. And there's always like just, that kind of air of like, yeah, like, okay, like one of those like cliche things, right? Like, like, cliches become cliches and then people stop listening to them because they're cliche, right? But they became cliches for a reason because a lot of people said it a lot of the times because
Yeah.
it's probably true, right? So like, the things that people say on their deathbeds and these life lessons and things like that, like we take them for granted. Like we don't actually like hear, what these things are like, as far as, yeah, don't work too much, spend more time with the people that you love, or, just like accepting yourself and loving yourself or whatever it is. Like we just kind of, it goes in one ear and out the other. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that like not that many people break that mold, right? You don't really see that many people actually breaking that mold and still, being just like normal members of society, so to speak, but like doing it in their own way. Like, there are people doing it, but you just don't see it. So like for you guys to actually take that leap, right? To take that plunge and to give up the safety and security and really commit to everything that you're saying, kind of putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak. Like, I think it'll help your clients even more to be like, it's possible. Like this isn't just like an idea that's like this intangible thing that's hard to grasp. Like this is actually like, I'm seeing it, I'm seeing somebody living it, and it brings just more integrity and just kind of grounds the work that you're doing in experience. Because I think that that's like, you don't really, it's hard to know anything until you experience it, right? But like it's really for you guys to be able to do the work that you do with your clients from that experience that you've had together and this journey that you've been on, separately and together. Talk about being able to grow those flowers and harvest them for the greater good. Like this is what it's all about. And you guys are just super inspiring, and just really, really honored to have this conversation with you, and really excited to see what you do in the future. And you guys have to come up to the farm. I know that like, once you are back in New York and, back up on the East Coast for sure, we need to get together because we need to have a nice journey together.
Yeah,
We
High
do.
for
consciousness.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Please let people know where they can find you. You guys have a lot of information out there that can really help a lot of people. So please let them know where they can find it.
Yeah. So you can find me at animanian.com, ANIMANIAN.com, or on Instagram, ani.manian. Yeah, if you are looking to break free of your limitations, get at me. And I'll let Lee share where you can find her.
Get at me. Get at him. Do, please. You won't regret it.
Many have tried. And we also, people who want to follow our couples work can find us at untamedintimacy.com, or on Instagram, untamed_intimacy. And Lee, do you want to tell people where they can get at you?
Yeah, get at me. You can get at me at leenoto.com, LEENOTO. And I'm on Instagram at leenoto_. And I'm really excited for any women who are listening. I'm about to launch the High Priestess Collective, which is exactly the place, a community for women where we're having these really deep conversations about intimacy and sexuality, how we're using our powers for good in the world, how we're learning about our masculine and feminine energies, all the things they never taught us, but we really should have learned, maybe instead of calculus. Right. Those are all the things we're going to be talking about in this collective. So I'd love to welcome any woman who really feels called to this journey.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. All the love to you. Talk to you soon. Thank you again.
I love you.
See ya.